is noon. If you can't see the screen for whatever reason, let me know and I will reshare it if it's not working on your computer. So to review from last week, for you guys who weren't here, we discussed that parenting in general is really hard, but foster parenting is harder because it adds a lot of different layers of challenge. We discussed that your experiences as a foster parent or resource parent and your feelings matter and are really important to pay attention to, and all that self-care that we discussed. Self-care is key, and most of us can engage in self-care when we're having a really good day, but it can be really hard on hard days. Then we kind of discussed what kind of contributes to a hard day. There's a ton of different contributing factors, whether those are things that are related to the kiddos in our home or the world around us or our own selves and our own personal experiences. And the final thing that we kind of discussed was to stay on the main road rather than that express road that we've talked about. We need to be aware of and acknowledge our own feelings and actively use and practice our tools that are in our toolbox. So, last week, you guys were asked to try to identify what makes a hard day for you and kind of what your push buttons are and how they affect your mood or responses to other people. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to share from that? Was anyone able to identify any of those things personally that they want to share? If not, that is okay. So, moving on to our theme for today. Today's theme is called Cultivating Connection, and this session is really going to focus on tips for building relationships with kiddos in your home. And we know that this is really important and really challenging with kiddos who have been hurt by other people or who have experienced that past trauma. So just to start off, I'm going to ask you guys, when building a good, solid relationship, what would you guys say the ingredients are? When you think about the positive relationships in your own lives, what kind of defines them? Does anyone have any examples?
Trust.
Okay, yes, trust. That's a big one. Anyone else?
Compassion.
Compassion. Okay, Renee said acceptance here on the chat. Yes. Good. Those are all important things. So some of the ones they list here, just mutuality, respect, joy, trust, curiosity, acceptance, repair, which I feel like is one that we don't normally talk about. So I want you guys to think about the children and teens who have come into your home. Why do you guys think that they might struggle to understand some of these concepts that we've talked about? Probably because of that lens. They were never modeled. That's right, Renee. Lack of trust. Yes, thank you guys for contributing in chat. So we kind of have to look back to that lens that we've talked about, how all of our life experiences and previous experiences kind of shape how we view the world. And so if these different, good relationship ingredients haven't been modeled to us in the past, if people have abused these different aspects, we're probably not going to know how to form solid relationships. So, there we go. If you guys take a second to think about whether or not you've ever been hurt in a relationship, I'm sure that we all had an experience where we've been hurt in a relationship. Now, think about the ways that that experience might have affected you when you entered into a new relationship. So, for instance, if you ever had a really difficult breakup with a boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse, did that make you guys, more cautious meeting someone new? If you had a really difficult experience with one foster child, did that make you more cautious when entering into a relationship with another foster child, especially if that new foster child reminded you of your previous foster child in some way? So do any of you guys, you don't have to share, but does anyone have an example of a challenging experience with one foster kiddo that affected kind of your future relationships with other foster kiddos? I'll give the people on chat a second to see if they say anything. But you guys may have experienced some situations where, you know, one foster placement in your home has affected other ones. So that's kind of that learning from our experiences and shaping our lens that we always talk about. Jennifer here says that she had a few teens and it was a lot more difficult, so she decided to stick to younger children. Even simple things like that, knowing your limits as a foster parent, knowing your niche and what you're comfortable with. You know, not everyone can handle fostering little kids, babies. Not everyone can handle teens. All of you guys will have your niche of kiddos who you really feel like you can best serve and care for. So previously, we talked about that altered lens that foster kiddos may have for relationships. We discussed how when you interact with children who have experienced repeated harm, it's really important to remind yourself that at any given moment, the child or teen may be interacting not just with you, but with every single person who has ever hurt or rejected or abandoned them in the past. And so this means that even if you're kind and gentle and generous and loving, the child or teen might anticipate that you're going to criticize them, reject them, abandon them, judge them, and overall just be harmful to them. So what do you think children and teens coming into your home expect from you and expect from your family? What are the expectations that you think that kiddos entering your home have for you? To be safe. Yep, that's a good one. Safety. Anyone else have any other examples? So those expectations might vary depending on that lens. So some kids might view a foster care situation as, oh, I'm going to be safe, I'm going to be cared for. Others might view it more negatively of, you know, I'm just going to be treated like I've always been treated. So it can make it really difficult to building those relationships. So the steps of building relationships that we're going to kind of go through here, there's going to be steps that you take before the child even arrives, and then as they arrive. And then we're going to talk about easing into the relationship, building that relationship, meeting the child or teen kind of where they're at and at their own pace, riding that roller coaster, and addressing the disconnects and engaging with joy. So we're going to go through all of those. So for a lot of you guys, this might be a review. You guys know a lot of this stuff, but just bear with me as we go through it. So before the child arrives, we often think about addressing relationship issues kind of when they happen, but a lot of times the best time to start thinking about building the relationship is before the child is actually placed in your home. So it's important to explore all of your family members' thoughts and feelings and ideas about having a new member of the family via foster care kiddo. And you might want to seek out at this time kind of outside supports, whether that's a counselor, a therapist, spiritual counselors, things like that. You might want to seek those outside supports to speak with different family members if you find that necessary. That might be helpful to them. Children might need extra supports and preparation, especially just kind of as they would if you're, you know, bringing home a new birth child. And the post-placement period can feel really overwhelming and isolating. And so identifying resources and connecting with supports beforehand can kind of help counter these feelings of isolation. Being really specific and letting other people know what you'd like for them, how they can support you, can be really helpful. Do you guys have any specific examples of how you kind of like to prepare your family or your home for the acceptance of a new foster care kiddo? Any specifics that you guys do? I know that my last session that I taught, they talked about they actually have like a welcome basket for the kiddo, which, you know, sounds kind of corny, but just a welcome basket with snacks, things a child might find interesting, you know, candy, things like that. And so she actually did a basket for every child who came into her home. And that's actually recommended here. So starting with the basics, learning about children or teens' preferences is really key to helping them feel comfortable in your home. So establishing from the beginning what you want to learn, or that you want to learn about them and their preferences, is going to be really important to establishing that relationship. Many of the kids who come into your homes are going to kind of come without those essentials, toothbrushes, blankets, proper clothing, weather appropriate clothing, hygiene products, things like that. And so those welcome kits that we kind of talked about, Renee here says that they have welcome kits, that they have toothbrushes, show them where the snacks are, things like that. So just little things that meet basic needs that seem really trivial to us can help children feel more comfortable. And this can also help kids establish a sense of ownership. These things are mine. I own these things. I control these things. Kiddos also might have fears around safety and privacy when coming into a new home. And so it might help to establish a space that belongs to the child. And this can be as elaborate, as their own bedroom with, a door that they can close, or as simple as just a corner, some space in the house that they can have some books or a chair or a blanket, something like that. So showing the child or teen the space in your home and noting that it's always going to be available for them as long as the child is being physically safe can be really helpful. We've discussed in the past that many kids entering your home will have experienced violence, excessive punishment, unpredictability, and other just different negative things with regarding kind of adults and their expectations. And so being clear about your household rules and expectations can really reduce that anxiety and fear about what they can expect in your home. Now, if a child or teen is coming into your home from a different racial or ethnic or religious background, or has a different sexual or gender identity than members of your family, it might be really helpful to have an open conversation about this with the family members ahead of time. And you can always consider having a really similar conversation with the child or teen to kind of establish that acknowledging and discussing differences is okay and it's safe. And just overall, we have to remember that very few people have less control and less power than a child or teen that's in foster care. And so looking for those little opportunities early on to give the child choices, whether that's, just where to sit at the dinner table, whether to sleep with their door opened or closed, whether to take a shower at night or in the morning, little things like that. I'm sure that you guys have heard the phrase, choose your hill to die on, pick your hills to die on. So with little things like this, choices and decisions that don't really carry a lot of weight, try to hand those over to the kiddos to let them have a sense of control in their lives in a time that's usually kind of chaotic and out of control for them. Moving on to easing into the relationship. So if you guys think about the early stages of placement, what have your experiences been with relationship building? How has that gone for you guys? Is that usually something that in your experience kind of happens quickly, easily, or is it usually kind of more of a drawn out process for you guys?
A lot of times for us, it's just the other kids that are involved. The other kids in our house really help to, integrate and help the new kids that come in and what the expectations are. So we rely on them a lot for that ourselves anyway.
Yeah, awesome. Very good. I didn't even think of that, of having, sometimes it might be more or less intimidating to have other children kind of show them the ropes on that. Good. Anyone else? So part of easing into the relationship, it's important to enter that relationship with the child or teen's pace. Attempting to move kind of too quickly can really overwhelm or kind of scare a child. But then at the same time, keeping them kind of at arm's length can sometimes communicate rejection. And so it's tricky to find that balance But the goal is ultimately to get a sense of what will feel most comfortable for that child. And it's really important to communicate interest in the child, but it's also important to be clear that it's their own choice of how much, if anything, they choose to share with you, whether that's about, them, their past, their personal life, things like that. It's really important to monitor your own assumptions during this process. They have an example here. So don't assume that a child's going to struggle or not struggle with behavior or relationships. You want to be prepared going into it, but you also don't want your assumptions to influence how you interact with that child. And expectations are going to be more important over time, but try to start slowly with them. A child might struggle to function when they first arrive in your home. They might kind of need a grace period to kind of warm up and get used to things before they can really start functioning well. So keep your goals really simple early on and kind of build from there. Renee here, she shared, moving back to how to ease the kiddos into the relationship, she shared that her mother-in-law lives with them and the littles really love her. She's a grandma, and so that's a sense of comfort for kids that come into her home. So I think it's really good that you guys can rely on other people in your support circle to kind of help you with that process. It's really important. That's a big self-care tool. And then just finally, with easing into the relationship, within what's comfortable for you guys, provide the kiddos with choices about what to call you, how to use your name, or what title they kind of give you. It's kind of this interesting dichotomy because you're a stranger to them on one hand, but you're also in this position of immediate imposed intimacy as a caretaker. And so language and labels are going to let them manage that boundary in a way that's going to be comfortable for them. So building the relationship. Lots of different points here too. I talk a lot today. I apologize for that. It's a lot of teaching today. But with building the relationship, your relationship with the child or teen is likely, we all know, to grow and change over time the longer they spend within your home. And so personally, just to stay aware and stay curious about what your own experience is in the relationship, as well as their experience. Look for opportunities to, ask the child how they're feeling about how everyone's getting along. Opportunities to ask them the names of people, the names that they use for different people, any questions about the placement, things like that. Because new questions are probably going to arise over time. So if at first they seem, comfortable, chill, no questions, like no issues, that doesn't mean that later these things won't pop into their heads. And so just like adults, we all know children have a lot of different qualities, teens have a lot of different qualities. And so being purposefully curious and trying to learn about the child or teen at whatever pace feels comfortable for all of you guys can be really good. Making a point of spending connected time together is also an important factor. You can, whether that's playing, just listening to music together in silence, talking about the day, any joint activity that can really provide just a moment of connection, regardless of the length of that activity. Relationships are really built on those different moments of connection. So seeking those moments out. To build a relationship, it's important to support continuity by learning about those previous relationships and experiences and preferences. And kind of like we talked about last slide, this might have to be done at the pace that's comfortable for the child. They might not want to share those things with you at first, but if and when they do become comfortable sharing those things, see if you can find ways to kind of continue those relationships or experiences or preferences if possible, or at least acknowledge them if you cannot continue those relationships and preferences. And then finally, ask the child how you can be supportive. Be really concrete. With those choices, ask, do you like getting help with your homework, or would you rather do it alone? Asking about what did your mom or foster mom or grandma, whoever, what did they do at bedtime that you liked or didn't like? things like that. Meeting the child where he or she is. So your family, they're going to have norms around things about how you guys communicate, how you express emotions, how you like to spend your time together, things like that. And so within those norms, it's likely that different family members have different needs or styles. And so children entering into your home may kind of differ from you guys as a result of those individual experiences and personalities, or, you know, different religious or cultural practices that they've experienced. And often adults expect children to adapt to their ways, which may feel very foreign to a new child or teen in your home. And it can really help to learn more about the child. You don't need to completely change who you are, but your expectations or interpretations of children's interactions may shift if you learn their style. So for instance, some families, you know, typically speak really quietly in the home, rarely yell at each other, and others might have a much more intense, loud communication style, especially if they're happy and excited. And so a family who is typically really quiet may see a child or teen who shouts frequently as being angry or breaking the rules or being disrespectful, instead of kind of realizing that this is how the child or teen has learned to communicate in previous settings. Does anyone have any examples of where a child in your home had a very different style from you and your family that you'd like to share? I know that in a previous session we talked about a foster mom had talked about how a foster child in her home, hygiene was a challenge. They had very different ideas of what was considered hygienic and expectations surrounding cleanliness. She had mentioned that, you know, showering and getting the child to bathe just seemed like a fight. And so they had different expectations there. We have here shared in the chat, their family's very structured, and a lot of children can come in not being structured at all. And so that can be a challenge. Also shared here in the chat, the child didn't flush the toilet. They were shocked when they're asked to wash their hands. So back to that cleanliness thing, sometimes things that we don't even think about, you know, we think that are just kind of global norms, might not be met. They ate all snacks all day and no meals, no set meals. And that, you know, is probably a result of their previous environment of maybe not having a caretaker that they could rely on for meals. And so they just kind of fended for themselves and had snacks. So thank you for sharing all those, Renee. So if you think back to Olivia, I think all of you guys have been in here at least once to talk about Olivia. If not, she is a character that we kind of utilize throughout these sessions to kind of demonstrate some of the concepts we're talking about. So if we apply what we're learning to Olivia, it says that Olivia is now 6 years old and on her 4th foster placement. The home she is in is noisy, has 4 kids, 2 dogs, and some extended family. Her foster mother works in childcare and is enthusiastic about playing with Olivia. Olivia is overwhelmed by all the chaos. She has lost 3 homes in 3 years and does not trust that this one will stick. She is quiet and watchful and resists her foster mother's attempts to engage her. When her foster mother tries to play, Olivia sometimes shuts down, but may explode, yell, and scream. So I actually have to grab my charger for my laptop. If you guys give me 1 second. So if you guys will look at this here on the screen and be thinking about ways that Olivia's relational needs might be different from the style of her foster family. I'm sorry, give me 1 second to grab my charger. Okay, sorry, you guys. My laptop was dying and I didn't realize it. So if we look at Olivia and her placement right now, how do you think that Olivia's relational needs might be different from the style of her foster family? Or how might you best relate to Olivia in this setting? It sounds like, if you remember looking back to when we first introduced Olivia, Olivia was a single child in her home. She did not have a lot of extended family around. And so I imagine that the chaos of this setting, it being really noisy with a lot of pets and children and extended family, is probably pretty overwhelming for her. She probably interacts in a more calm way, a more quiet way. And she's probably not used to having so much tension on her by the foster mom. The foster mom's really eager to play with her and engage with her. But it appears that Olivia is kind of scared of that. She's not used to being having so much individualized attention placed on her. Because if you remember, she was neglected by her parents. She had to kind of beg for her mom's attention and crawl all over her and scream and throw fits. And so having that attention on her kind of without being asked might be unfamiliar to her. So if we think on to the next concept of riding the roller coaster is what they call it. Keep Olivia in mind when we talk about this, but it's important to remember that even when relationships are going really well, they have ups and downs. So kind of like we discussed, even if you're providing a loving, caring environment for kiddos, the relationship might not always be going well or smoothly. Just like kind of for Olivia, that they are providing her with everything she needs, but she still is struggling with behavior and her emotions in that setting. Relationships naturally change daily, even moment to moment, based on our moods and our stressors and various experiences in our lives, that lens that we always go back to. Even the best relationships can feel really hard sometimes. And all of these might be particularly true for children and teens in foster care. So for children and teens who have been hurt in relationships or have experienced multiple losses, there's going to be a lot of things that can lead them to withdraw or disconnect. And these disconnections can feel very personal and can kind of lead us to turn to disconnect ourselves or feel angry or hurt or rejected by the child. So what kinds of things might make you or the children or teens in your care disconnect or pull back from your relationship? Anyone have anything you want to share on that? I know that last session that I taught, a foster parent shared that dishonesty was something that makes her pull back from relationships sometimes with her foster children. That really is a trigger for her. It's one of her push buttons. For some kiddos that people shared last time, they said that addressing conflict can really cause children to disconnect. That's uncomfortable for them. They've never experienced that. Having other children in the home is what someone else had shared. For a particular foster kiddo in her home, having other children in the home was not a good situation for that child. They completely disconnected and didn't like that at all. So those are just a couple of examples shared from, last session. So they have this quote here that I really like. It says, disconnection is often about protection, not rejection. And so even when we understand that children and teens are protecting themselves, the disconnects can feel like rejection. And that's why it's really important to pay attention to your own feelings and self-care needs and kind of keep on top of those things. So when addressing the disconnects, all relationships have moments of disconnection. When you've been working really hard to support a child in your care, moments of disconnection, like I said, can feel like rejection and even ingratitude in some cases. So it can bring up all sorts of feelings for you as the caretaker or the foster parent. And to protect yourself against taking things personally in those situations, try to anticipate that there's going to be those good days and hard days. Try to, keep your oxygen mask on, like we talked about. That was one of our previous sessions things, putting on your own oxygen mask first, taking care of yourself, remembering to use your self-care toolbox. And when disconnects happen in your relationship with a child, allow yourself time to regroup. But after you regroup, also take steps towards reconnection. Your ability to reach out to that child is going to be a really powerful message to them, and that, they're worthy of care and repair. And a key foster parenting goal is to teach children that their relationships can weather conflict, that their relationships are capable of that, that they can weather conflict and distress, and help them. This is, helping them learn to do this in a healthy way. To move towards that repair, you kind of put on your detective hat a little bit and try to understand the situation from the child's perspective. Remember that even if you don't agree with or understand the child or teen's whims, the behavior makes sense from their perspective. Remember how we talked about that in one of our previous sessions. Behavior always makes sense based on someone's lens or past experiences. So how to address the disconnects? Look for ways to reconnect with a child after relational breaks or conflict or distress. You can do this by re-engaging in daily activities, reaching out to ask how they're doing, or, it's as easy as saying, I know we had a hard day, but I still care about you and I'm still here for you. After those moments of distress or conflict, children are likely to stay out in that express road for a period of time. And I think you've all heard of the express road, but the express road is when your brain fails to use logic or planning or just thinking things through before acting. When you feel like you're in danger or you're threatened, your brain just takes you right to that express road of action. So kids, after conflict, are likely to stay on this express road. They might not be able to really think about how they're acting, and this might mean that they're not really, they're not able to be in relationship with you or begin to repair the relationship immediately. And so it's important to give the child permission, whether that's implicit, I cannot talk today, permission, or explicit permission, to take that time that they need to recover so they can come back to that relationship and work on repair. It can be really, really hard to apologize to a child or teen as an adult, but apologizing to children or teenagers really has a powerful message that you care about their experience. And apologizing, it's not going to make us less of a person. It's not going to diminish our own emotions, but it really serves as a model to the child of how to handle relationships well. And so your efforts to repair or apologize kind of validate the child or teen's experience. Just statements like, I know we both got angry and I'm sorry that my anger felt scary to you. Or it seems like you felt that I wasn't listening to you when you had something important to say, and I'm sorry that you didn't feel heard. So those kind of responses can be really great examples to children and teens of how to appropriately respond in relationships. And so one of the most important and hardest things that we can do after conflict is to move on, to not hold grudges, to let things go and move on. And our own ability to regulate and release our hard feelings can help the child or teen do the same. And so that's going back to, constantly checking in yourself, using those self-care tools, because if we can't regulate and release our hard feelings, personally as a parent or a resource parent, we can't expect the kiddos in our care to do the same. So does anyone, do you guys have any examples you'd want to share of how you've handled disconnects with kiddos in your care before? Anyone? You don't have to share. Okay, moving on. If anyone has anything in chat, I'll read it here in a second. So one of the final things they talk about in relationship building is expecting and creating joy. Now, can anyone share some of the favorite activities that you guys do with kiddos in your home? Things that you guys use for building your relationship or your understanding for one another, or just fun things that you guys like to do as a family? Go to the pool, baseball games, yes. My family we live in Kansas City. We do soccer games up here a lot, board games, that's good.
Maryland takes me to the zoo and all different kinds of things. Like next Saturday, they're having a foster care lake for all the kids around the area that are foster care.
Very cool. Very cool. Dance parties, movie nights, going to the zoo, just little things like that. Those are all great examples. So all relationships are going to be all relationships are going to be strengthened by those kinds of positive experiences. And so the more pleasurable experiences and more pleasurable and fun moments of connection that you share with kiddos in your home, the easier it's going to be to kind of ride that really difficult roller coaster and manage the moments of challenge and disconnection. And so it's summertime, kids are off school right now, and so those moments might be really easy to come by right now. There's lots of activities to do, the weather's nice, things like that. And so even throughout the year, when it's winter, when kids are in school and life gets stressful, making time for those positive moments of connection can really, really help us as adults to better handle the disconnect periods, the hard periods. So not only does it benefit the children because it's fun, but also benefits the relationship and the parent mental health. Good examples there. So to wrap up what we talked about today, we discussed that good relationships require many ingredients. We know that. Some ingredients that you might not always think of. I think that repair portion that we talked about today is really important. Being able to have conflict, but then healthily move on and repair that relationship. We discussed that when building the relationship, remember the child or teen's lens. Remember those things that they've gone through. Remember the trauma in those difficult times. Try to be trauma informed as a foster or resource parent. Relationships take time. Make sure that we prepare, that we ease in, that we meet the child or teen where he or she is, that we ride that roller coaster, that we take time to reconnect, and that ultimately we're always looking for opportunities to cultivate joy in our families. Self-reflection this week. This is not required. It's always just something to kind of get you guys thinking. But thinking about your own relationships for yourself, you guys don't have to answer these, but just kind of think about what has led you guys to disconnect in relationships and what has helped you ease back into those relationships. Think about kind of what you do and what you want others to do as you reconnect. And then we're skipping that. Okay, practice. This week they just suggest that you work on identifying a list of kind of 5-minute joy or engagement activities that you'd be willing to try with a kiddo in your home. So, creating and accepting joy. A lot of times it looks like, going to the zoo, going to those events, the baseball games, the amusement park, whatever. But then also think of just simple little 5-minute things you can do within your home easily for free. And then maybe we can discuss some of those next week if you guys would like to share. So our next session is Monday, June 10th at 12. Make sure that you turn in your evals that were emailed to you so you guys can get credit. I think I have everyone. I have Angela, Cynthia, Jennifer, Lori, Renee, Bob, Robin, and Tamika. If I did not get your name, please let me know in chat or let me know over the phone so I can make sure that I have you marked as participating today. And otherwise, you guys are free to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Josh.
Bye.